Okay, I'm going to do a little thought experiment here. So, I'm going to give you two different scenarios. I'm going to describe two different communities. Now, the catch here is that the first community is they're basically the ancestors of the later community. So, between these two communities, time has passed, okay? And I'm going to give characteristics to each community. I'm going to describe them. So, the first community, to simplify things, has 100 people. There is no currency, okay? There's no developed economy in this community, okay? People just, they do their jobs, and everyone has a job, right? So those jobs are as follows. There are 30 farmers, 30 hunters, 30 builders. That's 90 people. And there are 5 infants. Now, the infants don't have a job, right? They're dependent. So in order to propagate, in order to keep this society going, we need children. So there are 5 infants and there are 5 caregivers. One caregiver per infant. So this community is also working at capacity. And what I mean by that is that everyone's needs are being met, both physical, mental, and spiritual. Okay, their needs are being met. There's no one's dying young. There's no crime. There's no suicide, and there's no crime and suicide because people's needs are being met. They don't, and they have a purpose. They are fulfilling that purpose. They have what they need, so they're not dying young, right? Now, this is the first scenario. Okay, this is the first community. Now, let's fast forward 2,000 years. The number's arbitrary, but let's fast forward 2,000 years, and basically, this community has survived 2,000 years into the future. Now, here's the new characteristics of this community. Okay, this newer community. Over these 2,000 years, technology has improved, right? And it's improves the efficiency of the hunters, the farmers, and the builders by tenfold. So there are now more people, though. So say there's 1,000 people in this new community, and there are still only 30 hunters, 30 farmers, and 30 builders. Again, because the efficiency of the hunters, farmers, and builders has improved again by tenfold. So we don't need 300 hunters; we only need 30, right? And there are 50 infants and 50 caregivers still. So one caregiver still per infant, because I mean we can't increase the ability for a mother to take care of children by tenfold. That doesn't really check out. You still need to give children, infants, like one-on-one love, right? So here's the kicker, though. There are now 810 people. If you do the math, it checks out. There are 810 people in this community who, they're not hunters, farmers, builders, infants, or caretakers. They are doing something else with their time. What are they doing with their time? Well, these 810 people take it upon themselves to create an economy. Okay, they create a currency to boot. So they also, well, they invent things, right? They start other markets. They create luxury goods and services, and they also form a government. So of these 810 people, again, these numbers are kind of arbitrary, but there are now 10 government officials, 10 owners, 10, okay, and these owners, each owner owns a publicly traded company, so there's a stock market, and there are 79 employees per company. So if you do the math, it checks out. There's 79 employees times 10 businesses, that's 790, plus the 10 owners, 800 plus the 10 officials, government officials, that's 810 people, in addition to the 30 hunters, 30 farmers, 30 builders, 50 infants, and 50 caregivers, right? So that will total 1,000 people if you do the math. Now, I'm going to kind of make some parallels to the current US economy. So if we look at the owners of these companies, the 10 owners, they are making, let's say they're making 300 times more money than the average employee. So what this means is that there's a lot of wealth inequality, right? So we have a few business owners who are they're claiming a lot of the value production that the employees are creating. So due to this fact, we have 5/8 of the employees who are living paycheck to paycheck. That's about 62.5%, but we'll call it 60% to round off, I guess. So about 60% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. That comes out to 474 people of the 790 employees. Okay, so these employees, their value production is basically being paid to stockholders in dividends, right? And these 5/8, this 62.5% of the employees who can't afford to purchase stock because they're living paycheck to paycheck, they are not owners. They are not getting those dividends. Again, their value production is basically being given to the people who can afford to buy stock. So the people who can afford to buy stock are the government officials, the owners. So one owner can buy stock in other companies, and 3/8 of the employees. And 3/8 comes out to 316 people of the group of employees. So we have 316 employees who are purchasing stock, plus 10 government officials, plus 10 owners. So we have a total of 336 people in this economy who, well, they're doing pretty well, right? And they are the people who are making the most money. They're not living paycheck to paycheck, right? They're the people probably purchasing the bulk of the luxury goods, right? Meanwhile, again, that 60%, those 474 people are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, I didn't account for the hunters, the farmers, and the builders. Let's just say that they're making enough money to survive too. Perhaps they're not living paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't really matter, because technically these hunters, farmers, and builders could have been captured by these other business owners, but let's assume they're not in this scenario. It doesn't really matter. But here's another factor we have to consider. Okay, we now have caregivers who aren't valued in this economy. These caregivers are not paid for the value that they provide to the economy. So in the first community I described, with only 100 people, these caregivers, again, that community was operating at capacity. So if the caregivers did not do their job, then the community would fail to survive. Okay, infants would start dying, right? And in this newer community, the caregivers, they're not paid for the value that they provide to the economy. Again, they're basically unpaid stay-at-home moms and dads, right? So now people are starting to die young. Now we have obesity, we have a little starvation, we have mental health problems, we have, again, the obesity leads to all kinds of physical health problems. People are starting to die young, bottom line, right? Suicide is increasing, okay? Suicide is now non-zero. Crime is increasing. Crime is now non-zero. Bottom line, the needs, whether physical, mental, or spiritual, are not being met in this new community. Okay? People are getting mentally and physically ill, spiritually ill even, okay? So my question to you is, what went wrong between that old community and this new one? Well, again, I kind of hinted at it several times. There's scarcity in this new community, okay? Despite the fact that everyone's doing their job, we have manufactured scarcity because of this economy. And the reason this has happened is because this economy, first of all, doesn't give economic value to the caretakers, right? To the caregivers who are taking care of the infants. Next thing you know, people are getting abortions rather than bringing new children into the world. Now the population is stagnating. And if you look around the United States, we often have the ruling class who will blame the working class for not having enough children, right? The young people today are not having enough children. So this ruling class has taken so much wealth from the working class, the lower middle working class, that they can't afford children, and they blame the working class for not having children. They blame them for abortions, perhaps, right? Again, the scarcity is what's driving up the death rate. The scarcity is what's driving up the mental and physical ills in this new community. And that scarcity occurs because we are taking the value production that people created, we're tying everything, the purchase of everything, the purchase of the necessities, we're tying that to the new currency in this new community. And when we do that and we devalue the value production of the caregivers and the employees, for example, to the extent that people are dying young, again, we know what went wrong. What went wrong is that wealth inequality got so bad that people couldn't afford necessities, okay? That people couldn't meet their mental and physical needs, okay? And to kind of highlight the fact that we don't value stay-at-home parents, this is one of the biggest mishaps humanity has ever made, perhaps. I mean, you have to think about the importance that caregivers, stay-at-home mothers and fathers play in an economy. If you don't value this economically, if you don't count this into the GDP, what's going to happen? Well, exactly what you're seeing is going to happen. People are going to be disincentivized to have children, and they're going to stop having children. And this shrinks the economy, right? If we can't, or it stagnates at the very least. If we can't keep people coming, if we can't replace the population, the economy is going to stagnate or even shrink. And you have American politicians and other people who don't quite understand how economies work and how sociology underlies the function of those economies. You have these people blaming the working class for not replacing the population. And the end result is that the US economy is suffering in comparison to these other economies who do have growing populations, like India, like perhaps China and Africa, right? This is the problem with our economy today. We don't give the true value to the employees and to caregivers, right? We have allowed owners to puppeteer the profits back to themselves, to basically siphon profits like leeches off of the people who are actually creating the value. I might make a longer version of this video with some graphics because I feel like it will help explain this to people who perhaps aren't so good on the math side. But I think I made it clear that there's a problem, okay? Now, you could play devil's advocate here and say that first community I described never existed. There was never a community of 100 people whose needs were being met with 100% efficiency, okay? And I hear you, okay? That is a reasonable argument. However, if you look at the technology we have today, you have to admit that we do have the ability to meet people's needs, and we're not doing so. That's the point of this video, is to show you what the technology has done. It has enabled abundance, and yet we've somehow manufactured scarcity. We've manufactured scarcity because of greed, and you can't ignore that fact. So again, I might make a longer version of this with some graphics to kind of make the math a little more clear, but just think about that, okay? Think about what happens when we take the value that people create in a community and we attach that value to a currency as well as all the necessities, and then we devalue, we don't give value to much of the value that was created in that old community before the currency existed. We have systematically given the ruling class heinous amounts of money, and we've convinced Americans that the American dream is to be the billionaire, when in reality those dreams will never come true for the majority of Americans. And what's going to happen is the majority of Americans are going to suffer, and they're going to get sick of it. They're going to get fed up until there's a revolution. We want that revolution to be peaceful. We want it to be a peaceful economic revolution. We don't want it to be a violent one. So the crime's going up, the suicide's going up, our needs are not being met physically, mentally, and spiritually. Let's work together as a collective and fix these problems. Thanks for watching.